Hello there, and welcome to the third of my podcasts. I'm trying to talk about the Manifesto for Change and how we can make the built environment a more attractive proposition and help to meet the skills needs and improve the efficiency of our business and productivity and all those things. And if you've been watching the other two, you'll know that I'm passionate about how the built environment shouldn't be called construction, and how we have an opportunity with the current disaster that's befalling the sector, really, with the lockdown and various businesses having real trouble here, maybe to get some head time for the leaders of the industry to think about how we might restart in a slightly different way. Well, I've covered already the overall picture, and last week I talked about the steps I feel that we need to take to make the program for change that we need to see to make the built environment a real thing and get the advantages of that. Today I'm going to look a little bit more into the image of the sector. Now, the image is something that people tend not to worry about. I think the first most important thing probably is to stop calling the sector construction, which we do, and call it the built environment, of which it is definitely a part. I don't think anyone would disagree that construction makes a major part of the built environment. But by constraining ourselves to construction, we bring to the fore of everybody's mind the old ideas of what the construction sector is about. And I've tested this on my daughters. I've got three daughters, two of whom are still at home. Both doing GCSEs, actually, are in the GCSE years now. Asked them, what do you think about what's construction? And both of them said that their construction is the people who came to build our extension a few years ago. They really liked the guys, and they were all guys who came and worked in February through to April, digging holes in the muddy back garden that we have, and building a really nice extension using bricks, and had lots of acros and lots of props and lots of big deep holes, and it's very cold and very muddy. And they swore a lot, and they smoked, and they drank lots of tea. And that's the image that my girls have of construction. And I think they're not alone in that. Most people's face-to-face encounters with construction is when it's done domestically. But we all know that construction is only a part of creating the built environment around us. And that creation, the planning, the design, the management, and the creative aspects of all that kind of stuff, as well as the data and the accounting and all those things, and the business and the legal side of it, make it far more interesting a sector than just the construction side of activity. And the thing I always relate back to is when I was working in the IT sector, I think I might have said this before, people talked about programming or computing as being the sector I was in when I joined it. By the time I left it back in 1999, I think I left IBM, then that was now the technology sector, and that had a cachet, and that was somewhere where people wanted to work. That was an aspirational sector. When I joined it, computing was seen as being boring numbers, people who liked maths, and they were geeky. And we managed to change the image of the sector, not just by changing the name, but it was certainly a key element of it, and it did give a new impetus to the interest in the sector. And I really believe that if we start to talk about the built environment rather than just construction, we'll do that, especially if we wrap up in it the ideas that young people particularly find very interesting and attractive these days. The idea that the built environment is part of making us all feel better about where we are, feel safer, feel more part of a community, that we enjoy where we live, because we spend a lot of time in it. More and more people are living in cities now and spending more time there. And it's all part of our well-being, which is something that youngsters are really attuned to. And I'm sure those of you with young people, I've got 4 kids who will know all of that as well. So, you know, they do relate to those sorts of ideas. Equally, the built environment is responsible for 40% of the CO2 emissions of humankind at the moment. So there's another element there as well, which is high on the agenda for young people. The idea of being part of making the environment, the impact on the environment more sustainable and less dramatic. So those sorts of things make the built environment more attractive to young people. And the image is a lot about young people. It's a lot about making sure that not just them who want to come and join it, but also their parents, their teachers, and the advisors who will reinforce or distract them from actually going and following careers in the built environment. So I think it's really important that we do that. And there's a number of ways we can do that. And one of the key things I think we do need to do is do more together, like the financial services, like the medical, and like the armed forces do. And so you'll have seen on the television adverts which talk about becoming a member of the armed forces, not so much being a part of the Army and the Navy and the Air Force separately, but the armed forces now. And we need to take a leaf out of those books, and we need to look at how other people promote their sectors. It's only in the built environment, in my experience, when you get people going and selling architecture or surveying or construction or electricians, or all those granular different roles that we see in the built environment, going into schools and going in to promote each of those. People go and promote the caring sector or the medical sector or financial services, all of which have got areas of them which are not more mundane, not so exciting, but also have got some attractive things to offer themselves as well, and they're the ones they tend to promote. And you could say that's just marketing spin, it's not the real job. Well, every job's got mundane aspects to it, I'd argue. And actually, yes, we are marketing our sector as a destination for people who have a choice, increasingly have a choice. We've got too few people looking for there's too many jobs looking for too few people. So they do have a choice, and we need to market to them to get their attention and to try and make them realize there is something there for them. So and I've heard people talk about this for years, and others have, I'm sure, some sort of advertising campaign, some sort of promotion as an industry, as a whole sector, to make people aware that we exist, there's exciting opportunities, in fact, vital that we have skills and good people, we get the best people to come into our sector. We can do that. There's no reason why we can't do that. We're big enough. We're one of the biggest sectors. We've got the resources across the sector. It's just so siloed. So there's something we need to do there. And going back to the silo thing, last week before last, I think it was, it's all weeks tend to merge at the moment. I chaired a meeting, the first meeting of the Building People, Young People's community. Building People is about bringing people together, joining the dots and collaboration. And partly because I'm part of Building People too, the first meeting of the physical network of people, we were going to have an actual physical meeting, but it worked really well on Zoom, so we may stick to that, is having people come together who are interested in this, got a shared interest in a particular constituency out there. And Young People is the first of the 6 communities under Building People we've had the meeting for. So we got together, I think there were 7 different organisations all looking at working with young people. And it became very clear to all of us, and I think we all knew anyway, we aren't in competition. 2 reasons. We look at different parts of the pipeline. CSTT, which was one of my other hats, we look at trying to make people doing GCSE geography, so they're 14 and 15, aware that what they're studying is part of the built environment, and there are careers with a focus on surveying, because that's where we come from, but hopefully we're going to work with others and open it up. But there's a built environment sector out there that's worth exploring. And what I need to do as a result of running that CSTT program is to point the youngsters who are interested at the next phase. And the next phase could be, come and do the Urban Land Initiative project, where they get a group of people in, employers and their people, to go through a much more in-depth, intensive program with slightly older children to explain to them the different functions in developing a town centre, and how the surveyors and the architects and designers and all those sorts of people, project finance, all work together to actually go to a council and propose what they would like to do with this particular case study. And equally, I'd love to be able to refer them on to the people who offer the MOBI qualifications or the Design, Engineer, Construct syllabus, so that we can actually move them through and lead them in a direction which will make moving into the career in the built environment much easier. Or ideally, I think, as well, maybe into an apprentice. There's a level 3 apprenticeship available that you could get people into. So we realised very quickly, and there are lots of us working with young people, that actually there are 3,500 or more secondary schools out there with something like about 300,000 youngsters every year coming through there. Between us, we only touch a very small number of those, and unfortunately, the way things tend to work, they're often the same schools in the same area, so even fewer than we could potentially work with there. And we need industrial scale schools programs out there to do that. My ambitions for CSTT is to get to half of the GCSE geography students within 5 years. That means 100,000 students aware of the built environment careers over the next 5 years, every year from the next 5 years. And that's going to make an industrial scale impact on the hundreds of thousands of people we need to recruit into the sector and make that the destination. So that's the kind of scale of activity we need to do. And we need to make sure the smaller programs we have, although they're really high quality, and I don't want to lose that quality, let's get them focused and let's get them targeted and let's get them joined together so we can make sure that the impact is amplified rather than focusing on a smaller number there. So those are 2 kind of areas we need to work on. And creating the image of the sector is going to be about some of those programs. They need to be coordinated. We need to collaborate. We need to feed each other. And I think that's really, really important. There's so much opportunity there. And, you know, I'm a convert, if you like, to careers in the built environment later in life, because I worked in the IT sector and then consulting in various other places before coming here. But there is such a rich and rewarding set of careers. And did you know, behind financial services, it is the most highly paid sector in the UK economy. So, it's not as if we're selling people jobs which won't be great. They can be rewarding and well paid, and they're going to be there as well. However many robots come, there'll still be people needed to design the robots, to make them work, and to pick up the pieces when they drop things and so on. So there's going to be a role for people there going forward in the future. I think it's a really exciting set of careers to follow there. One other thing, though, and we'll cover this next week, is the culture. One of the things I always think of as a test, someone asked me once, well, okay, we're doing all these great things to make the built environment a better place to be. I think it was when I was one of the CIOB trustees said this to me, but are we ready yet? Would you want your children, your daughters, to go and work in the built environment? And only a few months ago, I was talking to a young, I think she was a land surveyor, who said, well, I said, how do you get on site? Because, there is still a male bias in the built environment workforce. And she said, well, actually, it is quite funny. Whenever I go to a new site, usually there's someone else with me. They're usually a man, and they're usually helping me carry the equipment to wherever I need to set up and do things. And the site manager always addresses them, doesn't address me. Takes me a few meetings to earn the respect and earn the trust, because they're not used to dealing with a woman surveyor. And so those biases, those prejudices, however much we try to pretend they're not there because we do all the right things and we have all the right attitudes, they are still there, and they will still be a barrier to other people going into the sector. So we need to look at the culture of the industry. We need to look at the way that people respond, the unconscious biases, and the way people address things, and the way people think about things, and actually recognize there is still work to do on that. Just because we've got a diversity officer on site doesn't mean we've fixed diversity. There's still decades, if not hundreds of years of practice to overcome. And people are people. They take time to get used to these ideas. They take time to absorb them and live and breathe them. And the only way we're going to change the culture is by each and every one of us walking the talk, living and breathing what we're talking about in terms of culture. So I'll cover culture next time. Hope that makes sense. Really ambitious for this change in the built environment. I think this is a key part. And the good thing about the image is that we're doing lots of it already. We just need to bring it together, give it a heading, give it a campaign to fold in underneath. And we've got a really ready-made set of programs and projects that can make a really big difference. Hope that's useful. Speak to you next week.